Hey guys, welcome to back to the program. Today we have with us Corey Poirier, who is a multiple-time TEDx speaker and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. Corey, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, my friend, and it's super exciting to be here with you. It's been such a long time since our last interview, so I'm super excited to make this work today.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk because you are always when I watch your stuff on social media, it's always like, wow, Corey's with that person and he's with that person, and he's like, wow, you just get around and you have quite the network. And so you building that persona and building that really from the old school, the younger people to these days won't know what a Rolodex is, but building your Rolodex of contacts, Google it if you don't know what that is, but just building your contacts. That's what has to happen when someone can say, ooh, you need this. I know a guy. So bring us up to speed on your entrepreneurial journey. You've interviewed over 6,500, top rated influencers in all genres and all walks of life. But at what point did you wake up and go, maybe I need to do that? Or was it one foot in front of the other and then it just kind of blossomed as you went?
I'm going to say more the latter, Mike. I mean, in fact, whenever I started this journey, I wouldn't have known. I mean, we weren't using the term influencer first and foremost. We weren't I don't even think we were using the term thought leader. We were literally saying, this person's we were identifying them almost like this person's a legend in speaking, or like Zig Ziglar, we would have said, he's one of the best speakers around, or, it might be like Jack Canfield. He's one of the world's top coaches. Like we actually didn't, I don't even know if we had a name for it. You might say leaders.
Yep.
We didn't even have thought leaders. And so I say this only from the perspective that I certainly didn't even think that was an option then when I started this journey. And at most, if I was saying that kind of stuff, I might have said, I'd love to be a writer, like that type of thing, or I'd love to impact lives, but I didn't have a term for it. And I also never wanted to be on a stage. So I know I can tell you I didn't want to be a speaker. I was terrified of the idea of speaking in public. I was the sweat dripping, knees knocking type guy. The first time I spoke on stage, I don't remember a word I said. And afterwards, I asked people what I said. And they were like, I'm not even sure I knew what you were saying, but you're so passionate saying it, you had me at hello.
Right.
And so that taught me a lot about the importance of passion as well.
Yeah.
And I believe if a speaker's passionate, you'll listen through good content. But even if they're brilliant and have brilliant content, if they're boring, most people will tune out. So that was a big lesson to me, that I was so passionate that they didn't even know what I was saying. And they said, but you sold me. And so, but I was terrified of the idea of doing it. And it wasn't until I actually got tricked into performing stand-up comedy one night that all this stuff started. And so, yeah, if I answer that question fully, I would say I wasn't the person seeking for this to happen. So it was your latter, which was one thing happened, and then it opened the door for a second thing to happen, a third thing. And after a long time of those doors opening and foot's happening and steps happening, I eventually started realizing, putting the pieces together that, hey, I'm building something here. Yeah. But it was certainly not overnight, and it certainly wasn't even over a couple of nights.
Yeah, that was back at the time, like you said, before there was the phrases of gurus and all those things. You didn't have the old Stephen Covey begin with the end in mind, and I want to become a this, so that means I must do, and now I must. You just were out there going, let's just do it. And in fact, you faced your fears and you didn't like speaking, but yet you knew that to get the word out and get your kind of your vision and cause and mission out, you had to speak, whether it was live or whatnot. You used maybe the crutch after you got tricked into stand-up comedy. But it's interesting. I find this quite interesting. You said I had the passion. Now, I guess I should ask, but did you take a course on how to develop passion and enthusiasm? No, it's part of how you're wired. So it's interesting here too. I've got kids that are 17 to 22 years old, and they'll go for job interviews and go, well, what do I say? What do I say? And I say, okay, here's exactly okay, get your pad and pen. I don't say pad and pen, but I say, just be you. Just do you. And so I think that ties to your passion comment. You need to have the speaking template, and there's all the ways you need to make sure you include the right things. But when you can interject into that recipe, you and your passion, your enthusiasm, your purpose, right? Then when you make those examples and those stories, because you've got to have those stories, I think that all of a sudden gets you past your fear of, I guess I'm standing in front of people, or I'm talking in front of this camera to people. Well, you're just being you. So how much does that play into when you know you've got the speaking engagement and you know you've got these points? Where does that, how do you tap into that passion and enthusiasm to make sure your message really is communicated well?
Well, there's two things I'd like to touch on there. The first one, though, which ties into what you said, which is kind of interesting because I didn't share it this way today, but how I ended up in stand-up comedy wasn't really even a happy accident. It wasn't even really a coincidence. What happened was, because this ties into your point about me realizing if I want to get my message out and the way I wanted to get it out, I'd have to be the person to eventually get on those stages. What's interesting about what you said there is how I got into stand-up was I had a stage play in a Fringe Fest. And I wanted to be the guy that was writing the play, and I wanted to be the songwriter. I never wanted to be on a stage. But what happened was I started doing some of these things, and I realized that when I would direct for somebody else, they would change the message. They were the messenger then, it would change. And so I started recognizing if I wanted my message to be out the way I wanted it, even a song, Jesus Take the Wheel. A somewhat friend I know wrote that song, co-wrote it. A guy named Gordy Sampson in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. That's a Grammy-winning song that he wrote with two other authors, but he came up with the idea. And so he wrote the song originally, and then Carrie Underwood made it her kind of launch song. Well, if you listen to his song when he plays at a local club versus Carrie Underwood, dramatically different song. He uses a different tempo, everything's different. And so I recognize that if you're the songwriter, somebody can change your song. If you're the director of something, an actor's still going to change the way it comes to life. And so what happened was one of my actors at the play sprained their ankle. And he was the lead actor, and we needed to give him more time to change costumes. And so I had to write myself into the play I didn't want to be in. And so that's how I first got on stage. And I asked one of the actors, hey, you know how I can get over this fear? Because I realize now I need to put myself in parts as well if I want to have the story come to life the way I want it to. And he said, well, I don't know if this will help, but there's a stand-up comedy workshop at the local university. So I went knowingly for 2 weeks. I paid to go to it. And then week 3, we went to a comedy club. We invited all the people. And the plan was we were going to watch some comics that the guy rounded up, and we were going to learn from them. We found out 5 minutes to showtime. He had no comics planned. It was us. And so that's why I say I got tricked into comedy. But the point is, here, what you mentioned, Mike, it all did start from my idea that if I ever wanted to get the message out, I had to be the messenger. And I think that's what led me to get into comedy, which then let me get into speaking because I wanted to get the message out the way I wanted to. So that I asked 2 questions. That was the first part.
What was your message you wanted to get out back in the day, and you needed to find the vehicle? What was that message?
So it was sales originally. That I kind of went to what I knew. So in fact, I would have even said at the time, if you asked me what I was doing, I thought I was probably a sales trainer more than a speaker. Like that's how I kind of get started. I've been in sales, corporate sales for years at that point. And then I heard the idea that people got paid to speak. And so what happened was I approached the local community college and said, hey, I want to teach a sales course. And they had never done a sales course. So ironically, maybe appropriately, it took me a year to sell them on teaching a sales course. Like I had to actually sell them on teaching it. And then I became a business studies instructor for them for about 5 or 6 years. And while I was doing that, like from day one, what would happen is certain clients couldn't send all their staff because it was too many people. And they would reach out to the college and say, hey, can we bring him in? And that's when the speaking started, because I was like, I recognized that, okay, they're willing to spend $300 a person for 50 people to come in. That's 15,000. Well, maybe I could charge 2,000 or 3,000 if I deliver a great message. Yeah. They're saving money. I'm getting paid, and win-win. That's how I started my speaking career. And so my first message was sales training. Then that evolved into customer service. And my core signature message now is related to all the interviews I've done. So it's basically the timeless secrets of influential leaders. So you can compare it to what Napoleon Hill taught in Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. That's what I'm teaching now, is what are the common secrets and the uncommon secrets of these top leaders, so that we can all learn from some of those and apply and implement some of those. And to kind of answer your other question, because you asked me about how do I tap into the passion? Yeah. I really think at the end of the day, it's being passionate about the topic in general. So I don't think you can fake that you're passionate about a topic you're not. But I also think if you're really passionate about it, it'll come through whether you like it or not. And so I was passionate about sales when I started. When I moved over to customer service, I was passionate about how I was being treated as a customer. So I didn't like how I was being treated. Yep. One of my early talks was called "Give Me My Freaking Ketchup," and the idea was sort of like Wendy's and McDonald's and that they had stopped giving ketchup out unless you asked. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I'm a salesperson. I'm sitting in my car. I driven off somewhere. And if I don't know any better, now I'm sitting there with no ketchup. I've driven across town for the sake of it. What does it cost them at their volume for ketchup? Less than a penny.
Right.
Yeah, I would say even maybe less for McDonald's, the volume they're buying at.
Right.
But let's say even 2 cents. You're selling a meal, and their prices keep going up. So you're selling a meal to me for two people, let's say for $25, and now I'm somewhere mad that I didn't get my ketchup, and I'm going to go somewhere else, all for the sake of ketchup. At least put something on the window that says I have to ask for it, but to
Right.
not even tell me. So it sounds like such a random thing, but I was so passionate about it
Yeah.
that I started doing these talks, and that was the title. And I would have people messaging me from all over the world. Just went to this place, and can you believe they didn't give me my ketchup? It became kind of a metaphor. But I became passionate about that, and I still do
Yeah.
to this day, Mike. I still do customer service talks, and I'm still passionate about that.
Well, it's like for me, I am marketing, which is very creative, and I am not data driven. So if I were told, please give a talk on the data, blah, blah, I'd be like, ugh, I couldn't get passionate about that. But you put a mic in front of me and say, get up and talk about anything marketing wise, then it's like click. So I really, really believe in that. So for instance, if you are watching this, listening to this, feeling like I've got a message to get out to the world, pick the right message. What's the end game, right? What do you want the world, the audience to really take away from what you are teaching them from your life experiences? And like the customer service lesson about ketchup, it reminds me of like a Jerry Seinfeld stand up. They get their best material from just living life. He would have taken that, run with it, and had a great stand-up routine, right? Just because it's living. You had the same experience, turn it into a business talk. So it's that passion that maybe gets you to go, oh, I guess I am talking in front of people, but I don't really feel like it because I'm talking about what I already know. I'm being that advocate for my target audience. So I think that's a really huge piece. Good point there.
Well, it's funny you mentioned bringing up Seinfeld, because you reminded me when you said it. He actually has a bit about that. So
Oh,
he has a
funny.
bit about it. Like, so it's funny you say that. He has a bit about. I can't remember the gist of it, or sorry, I can't remember the whole bit, but the idea behind it is how they won't give you the ketchup. They won't let you pump the ketchup at certain places. You have to actually take the package. And he's like, what do they think we're going to do? We're all inside pumping the ketchup and throwing it around at each other.
Yeah.
He goes, we're businessmen. What are you doing, Bill? Who cares? Let's just have fun with ketchup.
Yeah.
But he made a whole bit about how we're wasting the ketchup, which is kind of like the idea of what I'm saying is, why are they scared to give us the ketchup? And
Right.
I'll tell you, after I did that, I discovered this other speaker years later who had a talk called Give Them the Pickle. And I actually have the book over there. I think I do. I was trying to see if I can see his name, but he had this. Yeah, I can see it from here. Peril something. But he has a book called Give Him Pickle. And what it was, he bought a company, and they did surveys. And the thing people complained about is, why won't you give me a pickle on my thing? Like, people would ask and they'd say no. And his whole thing was, give him the friggin' pickle.
Right.
But anyway, it was funny because it made me realize why they gave me the ketchup was working, because this guy
Right.
had built this brand years before, and it was the same thing, and it worked really well. And it's because we can all relate to not getting the ketchup or our pickle. And so, I think
it relates and ties into something that the audience can resonate with. So let's bring this full circle and say, okay, if you have a business principle that you want to make and that you're passionate about, and you're speaking live, virtual, whatever the case is, don't just say the point, make the point by using an example like the ketchup or the pickle or whatever in your world, like, well, hey, how, or it's kind of like, and now people are like, oh yeah. And it really, I was talking to a financial planner the other day that was talking about, well, your streams feed into the lake, and your streams are this and the lake is that. And it's like, oh yeah, that word picture brings it to life. So I think we need to find a way that the message that's in our mind might not be earth-shatteringly, groundbreakingly new. No one else had it, but we can bring our passion and our life experience to it, to present it in a unique way, so that our audience goes, oh, now that's a good point. And I like how you were talking about, interviewing and extracting out from the mind of all the people, the 6,500 plus and counting people you've interviewed with, and you take that little snippet and that little snippet, and I'm sure that you find yourself going, oh, one time and here's a point that I learned from, and like the Napoleon Hill, and let's do a quick little test. Stephen Covey is known for saying, begin with the
end in mind.
Yeah, literally within 20 minutes from the recording of our talk here today, I interviewed a guy who wrote a book that says end with the beginning in mind. And he was talking about succession planning. Leave your company, looking back to go, what did we start with? What foundation do we build on? End with the beginning in mind. And it's like, oh, I love those things where it's like, oh, you always hear the beginning with the, yeah, I know that. Stephen Covey, oh, yeah, I know that. But hold up, you said end with, okay. Yeah, that's it. So here's the business lesson, right? So I think that your point is everyone or many people could have that thing in them that they want to get out to the world. Now, maybe it's just a public service announcement. Maybe you're just going to kind of get it all out there because you feel like you want to, whatever that might be. It might be a platform, a real platform like a speaking platform, but it might be your platform to monetize. And that could be your side hustle that one day turns into your full-time hustle, because this talk could turn into be a paid talk, which could turn into be a coaching course, which could turn into all of these things that of course could blossom. So let's talk a little bit about your project, the Influencers Vault, because while we don't want to call ourselves an influencer, because if someone needs to say, I'm an expert, I'm an influencer, come on, they probably aren't, aren't the right kind of influencer. But you need to have that mindset of, I want to influence the people I come in contact with my passion and enthusiasm on this one topic right here. And here's how I'm going to do it. But I need that roadmap. What's the Influencer Vault all about?
So I love what you just said there too, Mike, about, we're not necessarily going to say I'm an influencer. To this day, I don't think, I'm trying to remember, I don't want to call myself out and then find out I did once ever.
Right.
But I don't think that once I've ever called myself a thought leader or an influencer.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever have. Even in bios that I put together to send somebody. The only exception is I've said, which is a true story, is think what is it called? Thinkers 360. Like it's a group almost like Forbes Coaches Council or something like that. But Thinkers 360 put a list out. And 1 week or 1 month, I don't know how often they do the list, they had me listed in the influencer sphere. So if I was putting that in my bio, that'd be the only place I put it, but I'm putting it in reference to them saying it. Right. I still haven't said it myself. So I agree with you. If you have to say it, there's a question around, are you really? Right. And so the Influencers Vault, and remind me, I want to ask you a question, your thoughts are on branding, a message I got. I'd like to pick your brain for 1 sec near the end. But the Influencer Vault basically is a membership site, I'll say on steroids. So it's a membership site, but it's not just around one thing. Like, here's how you can learn how to become a millionaire, or here's how you can learn to do this. Because with being an influencer, I think there's various facets. It's like being an entrepreneur. Well, are we working on the core entrepreneur? Are we working on your health and wellness? Are we working on who you are as a person? Are you getting enough sleep? Like, there's so many other variables. So in the Influencer Vault, we're trying to help you be a well-rounded influencer. To your point, I explain on our website how PC Merrill was Zig Ziglar's mentor. PC Merrill, maybe, I don't know how many people he influenced. I've never heard of him before Ziglar, but PC Merrill at least influenced one person in the world, and that was Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar easily influenced probably 100 million people in his whole world. So yeah, maybe higher, but like millions for sure. And so here's the thing, PC Merrill only had to influence one to indirectly influence millions. And so to your point, an influencer doesn't have to be Tony Robbins. It can be a person that's behind the scenes. So I want to, recognize you could be a one-on-one coach and work with 10 clients a week, and you still can be an influencer. So the Influencer Vault is meant to support you. Also, it's meant to give you the platforms to highlight you. It's meant to give you the tools, the training, everything. And so what it looks like inside the vault is basically there's 5 things that we do to help people. One of them is we have the classic content, and I compare that to Netflix, like you watch the old shows like Friends and that. That's the classics that you still go back to. So the classic content for me is some of the interviews and stuff I've done previous. So Mike Sanders, for example, could be in there talking about branding. Lisa Nichols is in there talking about speaking. Les Brown's in there. And so these are classic interviews, but I've already done them. So they're not fresh or new. They're not new as in like happening this week. Then we also, that's one category or thing that you find in there. And it's built like a platform like Netflix. So there's categories like writing, podcasting, speaking. Then there's the Vault Originals. And those are things you shouldn't find anywhere else. So we have Jesse Ecker with T. Harv Eker International, which would be T. Harv Eker's son, who's teaching online business building in there. And so that would be a Vault Original. Then we have monthly training, which would be somebody, and I think that's the one we have you scheduled for, Mike, but it could be like how to build your brand or personal branding. It could be how to land media. It could be how to crush it on LinkedIn. And so basically, we're trying to give you the tools that every platform you're using or everything you're doing, we can help you and support you. And we're bringing in big names like Mike Sanders. We're bringing in, we have Shay Rowbottom coming up for LinkedIn. Shay has 700,000 followers on LinkedIn. She started 18 months ago. Wow. She probably knows a thing or two about LinkedIn. Evan Carmichael, 450 million YouTube views, probably knows a thing about YouTube. And so we have the monthly training. And then I left the two best parts for last. We have the weekly live influencer interviews. So in the next 4 weeks, to give an example in this, we have JJ Virgin coming up on Thursday. We have Les Brown next week. We have Bob Proctor the week after, and we have John Gray the week after that.
Wow.
So some pretty big heavy hitters. And if you're in the Influencer Vault as a member, the cool part about it is you get to be there when they're there live and ask questions in real time. So some people say to me, why should I join now? It's a member site. Can I join later? You can, but I'm never going to big Bob in again. If I bring on Bob something else, I'm going to ask about something else. I'm not going to abuse my relationship, and I'm not going to do more than one ask for the same project. So this will be your only time to ever be there live with Bob. Only time to ever be there with Les. There's always going to be new influencers, but you're only going to see the replays of the ones that you missed. So that's a reason to jump on sooner rather than later. The other side is if you jump on now, the pricing that's on now, it never increases for anybody that's already in. So you stay at that current pricing. Another thing we're doing, we have a 5-week speakerpreneurship, entrepreneurship masterclass that I used to sell for about $450. And we're giving that away for free. It's pre-recorded. We interview people like Tom Ziglar. We interview James Redfield, who wrote Celestine Prophecy, and we reveal secrets around writing and speaking. So you get that for free when you join in June. So I tried to layer it so that people that join this month get a lot of cool stuff. Now, I left out the last part to it. So there's the weekly interviews I mentioned, and basically that takes place inside our Facebook group, and you get to go there and you can ask your questions and all that kind of stuff. The last piece to it is the part that I didn't expect to be so big. I thought it would just be like a category. And it's the part that either people join for or they rave about. And people have been calling it the list. But basically what we do is we're curating opportunities. So we have a category called leads and opportunities. And so this is a place where you go and you'll see, okay, this podcast is looking for guests. This TEDx talk is looking for speakers. This paid speaking engagement is looking for speakers. This magazine is looking for contributors or writers. And right now we have about 85 of those, and we started 6 weeks ago. So you can imagine how big this, because we're just going to keep adding on, and we'll only get rid of the ones that are no longer current. But a lot of these are people that come to me and say, Corey, do you want to share the bill with Jack Canfield next week or next month or whatever? And I'll say, yes. And how many spots do you have? Because I get this site, I want it. And so what happens is we put it in there, and then people immediately can say, hey, I'd like to share the bill with Jack Canfield. Hey, I'd like to get paid to speak at a speaking conference or a teacher's conference. And then it's a PDF. So you literally, we put the hyperlink, you can literally click. And if it's emailing, it just opens up and you email them like that. If it's certain ones we manage, so you email us. Other ones could be a website where you apply. But the point is, you don't have to go seek these out. You don't have to say, I wonder if this event's looking for speakers. It's coming to you. So when people say to me, well, I'm so busy, I don't have time for another member site. What I'm saying is great, because we're going to save you time. Now you don't have to go and chase all these opportunities that you've been chasing. And not only that, Mike, these are people that are actively looking, and in some cases have come to me and said, I need people. So not only are you not chasing, I'm actually connecting you with people. So you don't even have to do any work other than you have to raise your hand. So some people will say to me, well, how much benefit am I going to get from this? And my answer is, it depends how much work you put in. And it's not a lot of work, but if you want those opportunities, I'm not going to reach out every week and say, do you want this one? You have to raise your hand. But it's not that hard to raise your hand and send an email and say, hey, can you connect me with that magazine that's looking for a writer? Just to give you results really quick, we're approaching 100 people across 4 magazines that reached out to us. We're approaching 100 people that now write for magazines in the last 2 months. Wow. They either been told they're going to be writing and they are submitting, or they're already writing. And then we've made over 100 podcast connections. And we've connected, I would say, probably about 200 people overall for other stuff. So, I mean, we're talking real results. You know, there's people that now have a column, for example, in Modern Magazine. Actually, the guy that's on the cover, we connected him 2 months ago, and he's on the cover this month of Modern Magazine. His name is Scott McDermott. So what I'm getting at, Mike, is these are real tangible results, not just you come in and learn. Like, you're getting the learning, but also we're trying to help you land opportunities to be an influencer.
Well, it's like the old saying, knowledge is power. Knowledge is potential power. You got to put it into action. So if you're providing the knowledge and the opportunity to put that knowledge into action to be the power, that's the best of both worlds. It's not just some inanimate login, let's learn and then hope you figure it out. It's connection. And would this help? And would you like to? I think that's spectacular. I've literally never seen anything like that before. So I'm excited to see the inside as well. When you were talking about that, it makes me think of a possible objection one might have. My day is busy. I don't have another moment of time for learning another 9,000 strategies. I know I want to be seen as that influencer without calling myself an influencer. But you just spouted off like podcast and writing and books and speaking, and A, I won't know where to start. B, I won't have the time. And C, I feel like I'd be overwhelmed. So so I'll ask that question, but I liken it in the sense that I've said this so many times over the years. Hey, you talk about customer relationship management software out there and CRMs. Do you know what the best one is to use? And people are like, oh, it's this and that. And I'm like, no. The best one is the one you're going to use. Because it doesn't matter what bells and whistles that this one has over that one. Use something and use it and really get the work out of it. So when someone would come into the vault and go, okay, well, what's the best way to build my influence and my authority and my expertise? Because there's all these ways. You need to assess just enough to see which one you're going to do, and then do it and do that one really, really well for quite a while until then you go, okay, now. So as an example, someone might say, you know what, I know I can learn how to speak in front of the camera, but I just don't feel like I could do a Facebook Live. Okay, then fine. Let's get you the training on that. But for starters, can you pick up the phone and do a phone interview and do a podcast? Oh, I can do that all day long. Then do that. Because doing that over and over and over again as a guest or maybe hosting your own podcast, now all of a sudden people see you as that expert and now you've got your momentum going. So talk a little bit about overwhelm and clarity.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought this up, and I'll say we even addressed this in the welcome video for the welcome to the influencer vault. One of the first things I say is, if you're left to your own devices, you're probably going to get overwhelmed. To me, this is the big elephant in the room, and I don't want to ignore it. So what I'll say to people, to your point, and this is why I said one of the things that we've noticed that people resonated with more than I thought was the list. What I'm getting at with that, Mike, is some people will just join up for the list. All they're going to do is every month when we put a new post, they're going to go bang, 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 bang. And they're going to just pick the ones that they feel they're fit for and reach out. So first of all, figuring out what you want from them. Some people want to be in the live interviews, period. And they're not even as interested in the other stuff because maybe the career they're building has nothing to do with that. And some people come in and they're working for somebody else and they just want to become a better speaker. And they're saying, if I sit and listen to Les Brown and Bob Proctor and I can ask them what their secrets are, that'll be the answer. So the first part is, as you mentioned, what are my goals? Like, what is my end result? What do I want? But the thing I say inside the video is, let's talk about the categories. For example, I'll say, look, there's 12 categories here. Do you want to do a podcast? If the answer is, equivocally, no, you don't want to, unequivocally, no, you don't want to, then why are you clicking on that link? Do not go near that link because that's not your thing and it's going to get you overwhelmed. So to your point, if you know you're only going to be using one platform, let's say speaking, writing, podcasting, whatever it is, then don't go in the other categories unless you have a reason. Now, there are some people, as you know, like me, that do all three. So I would enjoy all three, and I might be willing to invest in all three. But the biggest thing I tell people is figure it, as you said it already, but figure out which is the best one for you, get clear on that, and then dive in. Because you're not going to do the other ones, and you're going to get mad at me and overwhelmed because they're not your thing. And you're going to be like, I'm listening to this thing about podcasting. I don't have time for this. But it's because you don't want to do a podcast.
And then you throw the whole idea out because you got perturbed with one little thing. So start small and then grow from there. Like Les Brown, you're interviewing him coming up. I attribute this statement to him. I'm sure he stole it from somewhere else. Jump and grow your wings on the way down.
Yes, I love that. And there's another one I've heard similar, and it was like something like jump out of the plane and build the parachute on the way down. But same idea, right? Like. But I've heard that before. Similar thing. And so, I would say, I'll since you said a quote, I'll say a quote too. Zig Ziglar had a great quote. Now, it's been attributed to Zig. I'm assuming it's Zig. I think I asked Tom and he said it was, but I can't remember. But the quote was, you don't have to be great to get started, but you sure have to start if you want to become great. And so to your point, you have to take the first step. You have to know what step you want to take. But I will add this. When somebody, and again, I'm not usually getting the chance to, I'm not trying to overcome their objection. By the way, I didn't say the price yet. We're talking a $44 Canadian, 35 US, it works out to, member site a month. So I'm not trying to sell somebody on it. And we can talk about how crazy that is in a second, but I'm not trying to sell somebody on it. But what I want to add to that is when somebody says in general, I'm too busy. I'm already a part of 8 membership sites and I'm already part of these groups and all that. My question is, if you're calling it too busy, are you getting enough for them? Are they the right ones? So if you're saying I'm too busy because I'm in 10 membership sites, well, my thing is, and I'm not saying this to them, I can't make the decision for them, but maybe you need to assess those other 10 and say maybe the influencer bulk would replace 4 of them you're not ever using, and then you get back some of your time. Yeah. What I'm also saying is whenever they say they're too busy, so here's the challenge. When you said about people say I'm too busy, I don't have another minute, we'd have to dissect for each one of them what that means. But for somebody that says, well, I'm too busy, I don't have another minute, but maybe part of that busy, Mike, is that they're chasing opportunities. They're reaching out, hey, do you have a spot in your summit? Do you have they're pitching podcasts? Well, I'm saying stop, now I can replace that. So maybe you can get an hour back a week instead of saying I don't have another minute. So
because you are reaching out to all opportunities that already exist. Because from what you're saying is you're saying, hey, vaulters, or whatever you're going to call your people. Hey, got this opportunity. Hey, here's this, anyone. Whereas now people are going, yes, let me check into this. Whereas if you're just kind of like the fly in the screen door in the summer, just buzzing around, watching for the one hole to get out, you're spinning your wheels and waste a lot of time. So this would be things that are being brought to you to assess. No, that was not for me. This one, oh yeah, I'm going to check into this. And it could really save some time to give you the result you're actually looking for.
Well, you'll appreciate this. So the answer is yes to that. You'll appreciate this. I'll give people an example. And I'm not going to reveal which ones they are because I don't want them to get overwhelmed. But there's 3 opportunities top of my mind inside the vault that could change the game for people. Now, here's the catch. You got to do the work. So they don't know this. I'm telling you this so people could do some searching and try to find this. But one of them runs a really popular Amazon live show. And of course, just being on an Amazon live show, that's really good for your bio to say I've been as featured on Amazon Live. Because people just go, whoa, Amazon's got such a big name. The second one is there's somebody in there that has 3.2 million listeners on a syndicated show. And you know how big that number is, Mike. I mean, that's a big number. And they're a podcaster, but they also have radio. The third opportunity is somebody who's looking for speakers for a group that he basically does as a side hustle, as a volunteer. But he also is the guy who hires speakers for Microsoft. So what I'm saying is there's an opportunity in there that could result in you speaking for Microsoft, being heard by 3.2 million people, and being featured on Amazon Live by applying for 3 opportunities. So what I'm saying is, and by the way, and I'm actually early on, our goal was to bring in 100 people inside the vault to test it. We didn't want to get too big until we knew the hiccups. And so early on, I've been saying, hey, so-and-so, you should meet so-and-so. They'd be a great fit for your show. So I just basically lined up 2 people for that 3.2 million show just yesterday. I lined up 3 people for the Amazon show in the last week. And I've mentioned a couple of people for the guy who hires as well for Microsoft. With him, I told him I wouldn't list Microsoft in there because he'd get overwhelmed. Everybody go after that opportunity. Yep. So I thought you'll have to earn it. You'll have to want to speak for his other events, and then you'll find it. Of course, people I know really well who I've already known for years, I might say, hey, you might want to apply to this one. But my point of that is those are 3 opportunities that have 80. And just think if you just did those 3. By the way, all 3 of those are looking ongoing. They're not just looking for 5 people forever. They're ongoing looking. So yeah, I would say go back and say yes. What I'm saying, rather than you trying to go out and, like you say, find one hole, I'm saying, here, I'll open the door for you. Yep. Here, walk through. So yeah, to me, that's where the time saver comes in. And then also, I'm hopefully lending some of the credibility because a lot of these opportunities came through me. So if somebody applies and I already know them like yourself, then I can say you need to meet Mike. So you're also getting a boost over if you reached out and said, hey, I want to pitch you to be on your podcast.
Right. It could get ignored, but yet you're like going, okay, you need to check this guy out. So let's wrap up with this thought, which is kind of tying into what you mentioned earlier about branding. And for me, as the authority positioning coach, I teach people how to be seen and perceived as that authority and expert so that their target audience they get the at bat. In other words, all of your competitors out there, they say the same old thing, but when they see that you have been featured in and done this and all these things, they're going to at least give you the attention to have you pitch them or speak to them. Now, it doesn't guarantee, that you're going to close all this business, but you have to separate yourself. I love what you're doing because I talk conceptually about why this is important, and I do 3 specific things, but you've got dozens and dozens of other things that fall right up underneath. Okay, now when these things are done, you need now to put this into action for your personal brand. What do you do when you're on that show that has 3.1 listeners? What do you do after you're on that interview with Amazon Live? Do you just sit back and hope for the phone to ring? No, there's specific things you need to be doing to get the word out, to go, oh, it's really an honor to be featured in. Or maybe, and this is kind of like an aha that I had a podcast interview this morning. I gave this tip to someone. So here's a freebie. I said, when you go out to get interviewed on other shows, in whatever business that this guy was in, I said, there's 1 or 2 or 3 key pillar pieces of content, that questions that people have in the mind before they hire you for your job, right? He's like, yeah. I said, take one of those, and the next time you're on a podcast interview, focus only on that one topic, all the ins and the outs and the pros and the cons and the misconceptions, so that when you finish that interview, it's a good substantial interview. You now can use that interview, and you take that embed code, put that on your buy now cart button, so that people can go, oh, I'm going to buy that service or that product. And then right below it goes, hey, CEO so-and-so just was interviewed about the boom. And they're like, I've got the same question. Maybe they would have hesitated before clicking buy, but now they're going to listen to it. Stay on your page because it's an embed code. The point is, all of the things you're providing, as soon as it happens for you and your brand, you've got to do something with it to separate yourself from your competition, so that people then will book that call with you. And now you could blow the call and be mean and rude and late, and you're not going to close the deal, but at least you get more at bats.
Yeah, I call that, I talk about leverage, and I call it leverage in the sense, I'll give you a comparison, is that when we help people land their TEDx talk, what I say I help them with is not just landing the talk. And that's where everybody thinks, okay, I need to land the talk. What do you do when you land it? Do you know how to deliver a TEDx talk yet?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't. So we help you deliver it. But then there's a third part. Okay, now you delivered it. The video finally came out. What do you do?
Yeah.
Well, I just wait until people watch it. No, you don't. So there's ways to leverage it. So I talk about leverage. So your point is, how do you leverage being on that show? And it could be as simple, I won't go into much depth on this, but it can be as simple as, are you actually putting it in your bio? Do you have it on your website saying as featured on? Like, in other words, even if nobody ever, like, not nobody, but even if somebody doesn't listen to it, they might still buy from you because they saw that you're featured on my show.
I make that point over and over to people that do books or podcasts, and I'll say, hey, that book that's got your picture on the back, when you hand it to someone and you send them home and go, hey, read my book, they're going to fan through it. They will not read every single word, but who cares? The fact that you handed them that book and it's got your name on the front and your picture on the back and you wrote it, they're going to glance through it and go, that person's legit. They don't need to read every word. Now, it can't be filler text or, dummy text, but don't get offended when you go, hey, did you read chapter 9? And they're like, yeah, no, I didn't. The fact is, it positions you because you have it. So that's a big piece about that TEDx talk. Where are you putting it? It needs to be on your website. And you know what else? I interviewed a guy this morning, and on his website above the fold was just his headline and a video. And I said, hey, when I got ready to leave your website, this pop-up came up that said, oh, my book is on Amazon. Click here. And I'm like, it doesn't need to be on the pop-up. It needs to be front and center above the fold, so people, when they land on the page, go, oh, he's an author. Maybe I'm going to spend an extra 2 seconds on the website because now this guy's legit. He's not a hack. So I think those are some really, really great pieces. So let's wrap up with this, Corey. What's the best way if people are interested in getting in on the launch or learning more about the Influencer Vault? What's the next step that they should take?
It's pretty easy. If they want to get in on the launch for the vault, go to the Influencer Vault. No spaces, no dots, no nothing. TheInfluencerVault.com. When you get there, it's going to look like a sign-up page to grab like a book or anything else, and it actually is for our Insights Guide. But what it does is you basically just sign up there, and it redirects you to the sales page or the website where you can sign up for the vault itself. But that extra step is significant because we're also doing a free masterclass on the June 22nd. And so by going through that step, we can actually send you the link and the details to get in on the masterclass as well. But again, just by that, all you're putting is your first name if you want, or your first letter and your email. And then, like I said, it redirects you immediately to the sales page. And if you scroll down, a person can sign up there, or they can read more about it if you're wanting to learn more about the vault itself and make sure it is for you. So that's where I would send people, Mike. And and I think that part covers that off. Again, it's the easiest way to know about the masterclass, which is where I deep dive into a lot of the stuff as a training, and then also the best way to get to the website. But I wanted to ask, if we can, in closing, a question to you about branding. So yes. Hopefully I covered off the website part. And then, by the way, I guess I should say too, for anywhere we post the video, I'll try to make sure I put the link below the video. Okay. If somebody's watching the replay as well. the question I have for you, I just wanted to pose your thought on this. I had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I want to give this for people for branding, your thoughts on this, but they reached out and they said, I don't like the LinkedIn restrictions, I guess, on connections. I think it might be a new thing. I don't even know if it's true or not because I never read into it. But they said, do you care about the new LinkedIn restrictions? Our website can help avoid that. And I didn't know them before, and they addressed me full name, which I think is usually a no-no. Like, yeah. Dear Corey Poirier. Like, so it's very much now it's a pitch. And so they messaged that, and then they said, you should check out I actually have it open here, but I won't read the exact wording. But basically, have you heard about the recent LinkedIn restriction on connection requests? Well, at blah, blah, blah company, we found a way to bypass it. If you want to test the tool for free, go here. Then I didn't reply. I saw it, and I thought maybe I'll take a peek at it when I have a second. Then they sent me another message a couple of days later. Have you had a chance to test the name company here to bypass the weekly limit on sending connection requests? Here's the link to download. Let me know. Then 4 days later, the message I got today, maybe I was wrong, Corey Poirier. You don't give a crap about LinkedIn restriction, but they didn't use the word crap. And so my question is, interestingly enough, I replied saying, wow, if I did or do, I probably wouldn't work with a company after a message like that whenever we haven't connected. And then I said, I also wouldn't recommend it to others either, regardless of how good it is. I simply was too busy to check it out yet. And so I was basically saying, you should have maybe, thought about, I haven't even looked at your product yet, but maybe I was still going to. But now, having said that, I told my girlfriend what happened, and she loved it. She goes, I think I'd look at the website now. That's so interesting that she was bold enough to do that. So my question is, what are your thoughts around that, in the sense that, do you think that's risky? Are you going to lose certain customers? And is that okay if your goal is to repel people that aren't a good fit for you? I don't know what her agenda was. Like, she could have just been that person that's pissed off that I didn't check it, or maybe it's actually an intentional branding.
I think it's part of their shtick, and I think that you see speakers from stage these days using language that would make a sailor blush, and I think that you're going to have people that go, I would never go listen to that person again, and other people go, hallelujah, they're speaking my language. Just like in marketing, you test it and you see what works. I feel like one interesting thing is, they were pushy and they weren't personalizing it. They should have just left your name off. Using first and last name, you may as well put bracket, first name bracket, and had the dummy text in there, because it doesn't do any good. It wasn't specifically for you. Now, what they could have done, in my opinion, is that's interesting. If you're on LinkedIn and you're getting a LinkedIn message and they're like, oh, there's a new twist and a new restriction. We just did a podcast episode on this very topic. Here's the link to check it out on iTunes. You can listen to it while you're doing other things. And then if you want to ask us any questions, let us know. So I think that you layer in some authority and expertise in with telling of the news, because you need to educate first before you ask. They wanted you to, they were like, gimme. They were like, test my software. Well, I'm not ready to test the software. Barely had a chance to listen to your message. So it sounded to me like they were really, really fast and pushy. Secondly, they got up in your face. And I think that you might, maybe even you personally, if you had booked a call with them and then developed some rapport, maybe if they dropped some language like that, maybe that would have been better taken, because maybe you were developing some rapport. But in a message, you don't know who they are. They don't know your tone. So I think from a branding standpoint, now, interesting you brought that question up as related to branding, because branding is not just that logo and that logo. Branding is what's in the mind of the consumer. Branding is when they think of Mike Saunders, Corey Poirier. What do they think? What do they perceive from what they know, what they will know? It's that brand that you are engendering in the mind of, it's the positioning in reality. In marketing is one of the 4 Ps, positioning, and it's all tied to the mind of the consumer. So that brand just pushed you over the edge to go, maybe I'm going to Google around the new restrictions and find some other solution other than, because it just didn't resonate with the way that that you would want to be communicated with. So I think the takeaway there is, in branding, it is way more than just the prettiness of your website and a logo. It is the messaging. It's the approach. It's the way you make people feel. The Maya Angelou quote, people might forget what you say to them, but they'll never forget the way that you made them feel.
I love it. And I mean, to clarify too, the reason I even asked you about it, is because I'm not even judging them and saying it's wrong. And you knew that too. I'm saying maybe this is their approach. But I will say the only thing I noted about it is if they were going to take that approach, they should have eased me in with that approach from the earlier messages.
Yep.
So the earlier message made it seem like very general, very much generic. And then all of a sudden you're coming at me with something that's very personal as a brand. Like, this is our identity. But your first two didn't lead to any identity. So it's like you hit me with this, and now it's like if you went on a date with somebody twice and they said, you know, I never swear, I never do this, and then the third date they're drinking and they're just dropping F-bombs and everything else. Like, you're like, you didn't ease me into this. You told me you don't even do this.
Right.
So anyway, I just wanted to get your take on it as I close. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. And yeah, and I think it's great if they know that's their brand and they're trying to say, we're trying to repel you if you're not a good fit, then awesome. But if she did that because she was pissed off and it has nothing to do with their brand, then that's where it becomes a problem.
Yep.
So
it's just a dissonance. It's brand consistency. You know, and in marketing, it's a phrase called IMC, integrated marketing communications. You need to have a consistent brand message across all your channels. And so whether it is, now that's where, you know, logo and look and feel, that's a factor, but you need to be seen as that influencer, authority, expert. You don't need to say you are one, but you need to be seen as one because you need to teach and be an educator and advocate. You need to get out there on those stages and platforms, whether it's live, whether it's virtual, whether it's writing a book, or whether it's, you know, doing a podcast or a video interview. But to me, hearing about the influencer vault at the price point that you've got it at is just seriously a joke. But the benefit of being able to learn and see opportunities, that's a wonderful opportunity. So I encourage everyone to check out that link and see if that influencer vault might be for them. And Corey, thanks a million for your time. It's always great catching up with you.
Feelings 100% mutual, my friend. Thanks for being you.
Thanks.